Okay, in this lesson, we're going to check out Doc Watson's arrangement for Deep River Blues and talk about some ways to improvise over that chord progression. We're just going to look at the first 8 bars as kind of an excerpt, and if you want to check out some note-for-note tab of what I just played, you can go to the link below or the link on screen, sign up for my weekly updates, and get a PDF with the tab for that example of that part of the arrangement. Okay, so we're in the key of E, and it's an alternating thumb kind of thing. And just slowed down, what's going on, it looks and sounds like this. So you've got the thumb alternating, you've got these chord voicings on top, and the fingers kind of rolling through the chords to make the melody, and then doing some sixths and some other things, some blues licks. So the main thing is you've got this E7 chord up on top with the 5th and the root and the flat 7 and the 3rd. And then you kind of collapse that down. These 2 fingers slide down on the 3rd and the 1st string, and these guys flip. So you get this E diminished chord. Here's the E, here's the root. And then back up to the E7, and then these sixths, and then these sixths that slide into an A7. And then you're in open position for an E7 chord, or just an E chord, with some melody on top, and a B7 chord. And then the whole thing goes around again with a slightly different ending. But that's the basic idea. So the thumb is mostly doing 6th string, 4th string. So you're here, and then here, and here, and then the thumb actually is going to come over to the 3rd string at one point. So more on that in a minute when we get to the melody. But basically the E7, and then over to an A7, and then back to E, alternating between the 6th string, 4th string, 5th string, 4th string, and then B7 doing 5th string, 4th string, 6th string, 4th string. So meanwhile on top, I don't know exactly how Doc Watson did it. I don't know if he used 1 finger, 2 fingers, or 3, but however you choose to do it, you're rolling through these top 3 strings on the E7 chord, same thing on the diminished chord, and then, so this is combinations of notes on the 3rd and 1st string, open, and then going chromatically into the A7. And what's happening is the thumb is coming over to play the 3rd string and go up like that. So and so you're actually anticipating the A7 chord by, I don't know, a beat or 2. And then you're on the A7, and this is all sort of just pulling licks out of the A7 chord shape. And then you're into E, blues licks, and then rolling through the B7 chord, and then another blues lick, and then we're into this stuff again. So putting that together, it's very guitaristic, very idiomatic, because the melody is sort of this combination of what the thumb is thumping away, but it's jumping in to sort of make some of the harmonies, and the melody is kind of an embellishment of the vocal melody, which is really just going. Whereas the guitar arrangement is doing. So it's kind of like this hip variation on the melody that Doc's playing with the guitar. But so if you can just walk through the bass part alone, and then walk through as much of the fingers as you can alone, then you've got the two things that are moving parallel. And I know I've said this in every lesson in this series, but I think it's a really important part of learning how to play this way, so I'm just going to keep saying it. You want to work on the bass as this horizontal motion, something that's happening in time. You want to work on the melody, bass alone as this horizontal thing happening in time. And then the melody happening in time. And then look at, when you line those two things up, and looking at the tab can be really helpful for this if you're really visually oriented. But you can also just do this in your head and on the guitar, which saves you the step of having to memorize it later if you've learned it from the tab. But either way, then you look at what's happening at every given moment when those two things line up. What's happening? So at the beginning, we have a pinch. That means the thumb and the finger playing together, and then an index finger by itself, and then another pinch, and then another finger on top, and then the bass alone twice. So just in that measure is a microcosm of what it means to try to play fingerstyle guitar, which is you've either got pinches, you've got thumb notes by themselves, or you've got finger notes by themselves. And you just put it across that grid. Most of this stuff is in 4/4. Most of it is quarter notes and eighth notes. So if you can count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, then you can piece that one measure together. If you can piece one measure together, you can piece two measures together, you can piece 2 together, you can piece 4 together. It's just basically like getting this stuff into your brain and into your hands a couple bars at a time. And the first tune like this you work on may take a really long time, but you're sort of building these like connections in your brain, and you're building this muscle memory. And you're sort of building a process for learning this stuff. So the next one you work on will take maybe 3/4 of the time it took you to learn the first one, or half as much time. You're slowly building up a means of learning this stuff, which is just really another kind of vocabulary, right? Like the vocabulary to teach yourself how to play in this style. I don't know if vocabulary is quite the right word, but I think you know what I mean. So once you've gone through that, that's how you're going to piece together the arrangement. And sort of get everything to connect up. Now, as far as improvising on the tune, the good news is we're in E, which is a great key for playing blues and bluesy kinds of guitar things. So let's look at what we have for a chord progression. We have a bar of E, then we have a bar of E diminished, the dread diminished chord, then back to E7 for a bar, and then a bar of A, and then 2 bars of E, and 2 bars of B7. And the only thing that happens different the second time around is that it does E, E diminished, E to A7, and then it does 1 bar of E, 1 bar of B7, and then 2 bars of E at the end. And the melody reflects that. Or I'm not sure exactly what the melody is there, but that's the basic idea. So what can we do to play over this? I remember working on this and learning this the first time and being sort of frustrated because it felt like every time I was at the beginning, I had to play the signature lick from the tune. And I was like, well, how can I like improvise on how to play variations on that? And one of the best ways you can get started on that is to go, well, this is E7 to E diminished. Now there's 4 places on the top 4 strings that you can play in E7. Here, 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 and here. So here I've got I've got flat 7, 3, 5, and root. Here I've got root, 5, flat 7, and 3. Here I've got 3, flat 7, root, and 5. And here I've got 5, root, 3, flat 7. So in this case, we're taking these 4 notes and we're crushing them down to that. So the 3rd is going down a fret, the 7th is going down, the 5th is going down a half step, but the root is staying in place. So basically, you take an E7 chord, you move everything down a half step or 1 fret, but the root, and you get the diminished chord you want. And since diminished chords are symmetrical, as anybody who's ever watched a Dudley Do-Right cartoon knows, you can do the same thing to any one of the 4 E7 chords. So we can take that idea and do it on a different E7 voicing. So if we're here, here's the root. If we take every other voice in the chord, every other note in the chord, and move it back 1 fret, now we have this. And so we can get from E7 to E diminished and back. And if we're here, if we play this variation with the root 5, flat 7, and then just double the root on top for the E7, we can go down to this and back up, because this is the root, and the root, we've got 2 roots here, and the root stays constant. So, which also means if we're here, we can't really go down, right? Because we're running out of room here, but we can go from here to here and back. And then if we're up here, there's the root, so we can go down to, this one's got to go down a fret, that's going to stay, that's got to go down, and that's got to go down a fret. So now we've got 4 places. 5 really, in a way. No, 4, I can count. If you can't count to 4 as a musician, you are out of luck. So if you're just playing an open position and you're playing blues, right? So here's E, and I'm just alternating my thumb and playing a little lick here, and then I'm going to this chord, right? That's the lowest one of the diminished voicings, and I can play the same lick on top. So whether I've got E, so I'm keeping the E in the bass. I think I forgot to do that the first time, but and then back to, and then A7. Right? So you can be playing whatever. Now you could also just start here. And that's cool because you could make licks out of that. Right? Here's E. Just do the same thing using the open string the same way. So. All right, so you can start there, or you could start here like we did, but you don't have to play the same lick. It'll sound pretty similar. But you could change the rhythm up. I'm playing a lot as a chord. I'm grabbing the top 3 strings with my middle, with my index, middle, and ring finger, and doing a little slide, moving the chord down a half step and back. So you could do things like that. Mix it up like that, or if you're up here, I haven't tried this before. I don't know if this is going to be cool or not. Right, because there's that sort of Delta blues, Robert Johnson-y kind of thing. Right, and so here, if you're all the way up here in the stratosphere, up in the nosebleed section of the neck, where it's easy to forget what note you're on, the trackless wilderness that is the 9th and 10th frets, and you want to bail out in measure 4 and get to an A7, here's a close A7 you can get, because these same E7 voicings transpose really nicely. Here's A7. There's just going to be 4 of these, 4 A7s on the top 4 strings. This one, and then this one, with the flat 7, 3rd, 5th, and root. And then this one, root 5, flat 7, 3, and then 3, flat 7, root 5. And this one down here is 5, root 3, flat 7. Can't leave that one out. And so now you have 4 landing points. Right, you can come up here for your A, or if you're up here to start with, or if you're up here already, I guess we talked about this, but if you're here, let's see. Or if you're here, and a nice way to connect up these 7th chords is to grab the whole voicing. In this case I got, let's see, the thumbs going like this between the 5th and the 4th string, and then index, middle, and ring are over here. And so you can grab the whole chord, and then just grab the 3rd and 1st string and move down with the outer voicings connected up to the next one. So, and I think somewhere else here on the channel there's a lesson about moving around 7th chord. So if I can figure out which one it is, I'll put a link at the end of this one. We've got these different ways to start. We've got these different ways to land. And finally, we can move between diminished chords, because the diminished chords, I won't get into the gory details, but they basically, every 3 frets, they're just inversions of each other, which means that when you're on one of them, you can move from one to the next. Which is great, because then you can really start to get around from one part of the neck to another. And since one question that always seems to come up so much is like, how do I get around the neck, or how do I get to different voicings on the fingerboard? Just learning these 4 7th chords, and also knowing how to use those 4 diminished shapes to kind of jump around, super helpful. So that's some ideas about how to improvise on Deep River Blues. Again, you can go to the link below or at the end of the video to sign up and to get some tab for the 8-bar arrangement. And leave your comments down below, questions if you've got them. And I hope you enjoy working on this. I'll see you next time.